Hey, it's Bernard Nomberg with the Nomberg Law Firm in Birmingham, and I'm with my friend and neighbor, Krissy Custis. Hey, Krissy.
Hey.
Thank you for joining me for a few minutes. Krissy is a longtime nurse here in Birmingham, and she's had many years of being in the clinical setting and in the hospital setting, working with patients, life flight, etc. What we're talking about today is injuries to nurses and other hospital personnel that are not in the typical scenario that you may think of. And what the reason why we're asking that is whether or not it could be a compensable workers' compensation or other type of claim. We all know the Krissy, why don't you tell us some typical injuries that nurses, PAs, etc. may get while they're in the hospital setting. This is not where we're going to go with our conversation, but I want to just differentiate between what we are going to talk about and what you're going to tell us.
Okay. So typically healthcare workers, with lifting and transferring of patients, we see a lot of low back strains, sprains, shoulder injuries, cervical type injuries, all just related to patient movement.
Okay. I also, through our practice, we've dealt with hospital personnel who've had slip and falls or trips. We've had where someone in a wheelchair has actually run into a nurse, a client of ours, and broke her leg in two places. It was a terrible accident. Those are covered issues. Those are events that typically are going to be compensated through work comp. Medical care is going to be paid for. Compensation will be paid for at different times. But what we're really talking about are other types of scenarios. And Krissy, I just want to draw on your experience and your expertise here. Let's see if we can come up with some scenarios that we need to talk about from a legal standpoint, whether or not they might be covered.
Okay.
Tell me something.
So just kind of right offhand, I think about, we're given, anywhere between 30 minutes to an hour break typically for a 12-hour shift. I know that I've had friends and other coworkers that would actually go to an on-facility gym to work out during their break. So what happens if they fall on the treadmill and break an ankle
during
while
their break?
On break?
Well, it really can be looked at two ways. If the treadmill or the equipment, even though it's on their break, if the employer provides it as a benefit to the employee, and it's an incentive for the employee to stay on the ground, stay nearby, if it helps with employee satisfaction of working there, if there are benefits to the employer, even though it's on a break, that could be a compensable claim. Even though they're not getting paid and they're doing it for their own health, their benefit, no one made them go there, there are arguments that can be made that the injury itself, the medical care and potentially compensation could be, through Alabama workers' compensation, it could be a compensable situation.
Okay, so to go one step further, what happens if they take their break off of hospital campus and an injury occurs while they're off campus?
Okay, just spitballing. Let's say that there is a school across the street from the clinic or the hospital setting or the nursing home where they work, and at that school there's a basketball court, and the nurse or the PA, whoever it is, but the doctor, on their own break goes across the street and plays hoops. And that school environment, that gym, has really nothing other than just being a neighbor to the clinic or the hospital. I don't think that that's going to be a covered event because that is strictly a voluntary off-campus or away from work event. And there's a big difference there. But I caution, even though we're only here for a few minutes, every situation dealing with injuries on the job are different. It takes a complete analysis because you've got to have not only legal causation and medical causation, which we won't really get into the details today. In order to have a compensable claim, you gotta pass some legal criteria.
Okay. So one other question that kind of comes to mind is there are a lot of facilities that have off-campus parking that require their employees to park in a parking lot or a facility that is blocks and blocks away, and they may have to take a bus to come in. So if they've parked in this off-campus lot and then are walking to catch the bus and slip and fall, would the hospital be responsible?
Well, we've dealt with that case actually several times, but the key word that you said there is required. If the employer requires the employee to park in this remote lot and then they have some type of an accident, there actually could be a couple of different types of legal theories to pursue. There'd be a workers' compensation claim to pursue. There may also be a third-party negligence claim. Who's responsible for the upkeep of that parking lot? Was the person walking to the van or the shuttle, were they hit by another driver in the parking lot? I mean, there's so many different scenarios here. But to answer your ultimate question or concern, absolutely, those events could be a covered compensable workers' compensation and other types of claims. Again, every pattern is a little bit different. If these types of scenarios, different than the typical injuries to nurses and doctors and PAs, et cetera, happen, if you've got a little bit different situation and you've been injured and you've got questions about that, give us a call at the Nomberg Law Firm, 205-930-6900, nomberglaw.com. We also could be found Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And I don't want to forget to thank you, Krissy. That was very good, quick scenarios for us to go through. Have a good day.